in your view, are the absolutely key skills of the online shopkeeper?
For us, we have to engage the shopper to feel part of the experience. That's why when we had our people out in Milan, the buyers were interviewed after every show. Yeah. So the shoppers could see exactly what had just come off Prada, off Tom Ford, off all of the shows across Europe. Right. We had our social media team tweeting from all of the shows, so they could engage that audience again in a different way. So it isn't part of just one simple thing. We've created magazines to try and sell the products that we showcase. Ah. So it's a whole cocktail. It's not simplistically now you provide a shop for people to shop in. Right. It's a whole way of life to engage that shopper to be part of the Harrods experience.
I understand that you've commissioned some research which will throw some light on what issues actually, notwithstanding Hackett's viewpoint there, are confronting the luxury sector and brands online generally.
Yeah, so the report that we created, and we do one of these about every 6 months on different verticals, this one we did on the luxury sector. The report we created identified two problems, really. One of them is really the one that Mark's focused on, which is counterfeits. And I think that's what people, when they worry about the internet in brand owners, generally think about product companies anyway, worry about counterfeits. Actually, I don't think that is necessarily the most important problem that we identified, which was traffic. And we found, we studied 5 luxury brands, and we found that for those 5 luxury brands, approximately 120 million visits per annum were being siphoned off somewhere other than the intended destination of the consumer. And there's another stat that doesn't come from our study, it's just one I picked up from reading stuff elsewhere, is that 30% of the searches that people do on the internet, including a brand name, go somewhere other than to a genuine site owned by the brand owner. And therefore, people are using the internet as a great place to exploit brands and draw traffic to sometimes sites selling counterfeit product, sometimes sites selling competitive product, sometimes sites selling something completely different, but that would appeal to somebody who was interested in that.
And it came up at something I was at recently as well on a panel, is what do you think brands should do, or brand owners should do, about that education process to consumers? Because it's so important that traditionally luxury brands have hidden behind counterfeit and pretended it didn't, they've dealt with it, but they've pretended it didn't exist. And I think our point of view for our brand, and we wish more brands felt like that so that we could kind of club together, is that if the more we talk about it to consumers, is the more we educate them, and the more hopefully we help them make an educated decision about whether they buy counterfeit or whether they buy the real thing.
That's absolutely got to be right, because if there'll be different viewpoints on this, but studies say, some of which I was involved in a few years back, say that actually if you it's economic supply, isn't it? Cut off the demand, and the supply will diminish proportionately. So if you can invest in your communications, it's got to be right that you'll move consumers correctly to you or away from fakes, depending on what they may be thinking. So, I mean, I'm with you 100% on that one. It's got to be right.
And I wonder if you could just give us your personal reflections on what you've heard, and if to kind of help that luxury executive making the choices when it comes to making sense of everything and where to spend their marketing money.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can talk from a personal point of view from how Condé Nast fits into that particular question, I suppose. And we've seen a marked change, I think, really, particularly in the luxury industry, with luxury advertisers beginning to spend their money in a digital space, which I don't think even 2 years ago that was really the truth. And I think it's extraordinary how quickly these luxury advertisers have embraced digital, some more so than others. But I genuinely believe there's a significant sea change that has happened dramatically. In Burberry, we've talked about ad nauseum, they are innovators in the digital space, and deservedly so. But many other brands, Coach obviously as well, have embraced digital. And I think for me that the key is not to think about digital in isolation. I think the key is to think about digital as part of your marketing strategy. We've had experience over the years when someone has moved all their money away from our print business into the digital business, and it hasn't been a spectacular success. So I think it really is a question of joining up the dots and making sure that whatever you do from a marketing perspective, you do it across platform. And you know, we do it ourselves. We market our own brands now across platform. We use obviously our own magazine brands, we use our own websites, but we use other platforms as well. So that for me is key, is to ensure that there is a sort of joined up approach across your business. And we certainly believe in that firmly.
What is the Facebook position about this question about where luxury brands should be spending their money?
Well, I think, let me join the two questions, because you know, several observations today that I think are relevant. First, let's talk about the consumer. I think many in this audience are a bit surprised by the audience in, let me take social, but digital more broadly. It's not 12-year-old girls poking each other any longer. And I think that misperception probably still exists. Actually, at lunch I had a couple conversations to that extent. So the audience is 60% over 25. They spend 20 to 40% more than the fan base does than just the average shopper does. And they have a 33% higher favorability if you think of this net promoter score that's often used to talk about how much are they an advocate. They're also incredibly engaged. I think that's the point where, so what Jamie just said about, you know, the shift, it's increasingly difficult, we say, to bore your consumer into buying your products, right? You have to be interesting and engaging and have high quality visuals, video, images shot by Mario Testino, audio tracks. The best brands in this medium are doing different things. Another thing I said at lunch is it was funny to look at the first television adverts. They were basically radio spots that were read in front of a camera. I think the same is true today with some of the, not to pick on the revolving storefront, but how much as a consumer do I want to see the actual physical store versus I want to engage with the products, right? So I think that's a mindset shift around engagement. Clearly distribution, I think, is the third thing from my perspective as far as understanding social mechanisms, and we can talk a bit about these, but how do people want to share with people that they care about as brand advocates or ambassadors, or just because that authenticity point about, you know, bloggers maybe not being as authentic as they used to be. Well, geez, my friends tend to not have as many commercial interests today as probably bloggers do. And then I think the last point is just pure conversion, and we haven't talked about conversion, but again, a comment that was throwaway comment made at lunch about yeah, well, Burberry, you know, they just have a very chav audience on that are shopping for medallions and the trench print. It's just not true. No. You know, several £1,000 handbags are sold through their world store, and it's not just Burberry. There's several others who see conversion. So, I guess my big reflection is just how much of an exercise I'm eager to do in dialogues like this to try and help perceptions catch up with some of the reality and then continue the experimentation, because I think the most interesting things are happening, frankly, in this room.
Right. Okay, that's very interesting. Ronan, I wonder if maybe you could start by explaining a little bit about 360 Buy, but also about the more recent venture.
Yeah, absolutely. First off, 360 is a company that's a beneficiary of what was discussed in the last two panels. So 360 is China's largest business-to-consumer website. They have 20 million users, registered users, 240,000 orders a day, typically referred to as the Amazon.com of China, with one fundamental difference, and that fundamental difference is they're vertically integrated. So they have the website, they have the brands that go through the website, but then they also have warehouses and, most importantly, the distribution. So It's the distribution in China that's so important because it gets the product to really the tier 3, tier 4 cities and then beyond that. So that's 360. It was founded in 2003 by friends of mine. That's why I'm here today. In this year, it will do $4 billion of sales. So great growth and great growth potential from the Chinese market. the latest objective is to develop a luxury-oriented portal, which will play into 360, and the name of that is Top Life. And that will focus on luxury brands across a discrete number of categories, but again, trying to benefit from the distribution and the power that they've got from their existing user base.
Great. So we'll come back and we'll talk a lot more about the specifics of that. And Fiona, do you want to tell us a bit about?
Sure. The Corner.com is part of the Yoox Group, which is a large e-commerce company that's existed since 2000. The Corner.com, unlike Yoox, which is more around discount fashion, focuses more on the luxury end of the market. It's a pure play website for men's and women's wear fashion. It's a global website distributing to over 64 countries. We translate into 9 languages, 5 currencies, completely global. And 2 weeks ago, we launched a completely discrete version of the website for China. So the corner.cn, which was a very exciting project for the business, a huge challenge, and we're very new in the market, but we've learned a lot already, which makes the future even more exciting for us.
And finally, to thank the Walpole team and the RAC and Barclays as well for yet again supporting us so well and doing such a terrific job. So thank you very much.